Hello and welcome to week 1 of the Santa's Workshop Christmas Crochet Along with Sirdar. My name's Catherine and I'm from Catherine Crochets. You can find out more about me in the introduction video that came out last week, or if you missed that, do feel free to hop over to my account on Instagram, which is Catherine Crochets, or my website catherinecrochets.com, where you can find out more about the crochet designs that I've made in the past. But I'm really excited to be here with you today to start week 1 of the Christmas Cal for 2025. So that you're fully ready to join in with week 1, if you haven't already, make sure that you've got the official yarn pack with all of the 15 balls of yarn that you'll need to make the blanket. It also contains an exclusive label for your blanket from Sirdar, as well as a few other little goodies. You're also going to need a 4mm crochet hook like this one from Sirdar. This one has a lovely soft grip, which is really nice to hold, so it's great especially if you're a beginner. You'll need a pair of scissors like these for trimming off your yarn when you've finished working with it. You'll need a needle for sewing in your ends. A few stitch markers will be handy as well throughout the blanket, and you'll need some bobbins as well for winding your yarn onto at certain points. As well as making sure you've got all your yarn ready, you'll also need to sign up on the Sirdar website to receive the free pattern each week. Even if you've signed up before to a previous Sirdar Cal, you'll need to sign up again just to make sure you get the pattern in your inbox every week as it's released for this crochet along. As well as the written pattern, there will be video tutorials released each week to accompany that week's pattern, showing you all the stitches and techniques that you'll need to be able to complete the crochet along for that week. So let's talk a little bit about the blanket, which is what we're all here for. The blanket's got this really fun train panel in the middle, which has a train pulling along lots of different toys, as well as some presents all ready for Santa to deliver on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve maybe. We've got a nice list here, which is a very important list for Father Christmas. There's a stocking, a Santa's hat, and then there's some really fun border panels, spiked granny stitch one with some loopy foliage with berries and bells in it. We've got elf hats, we've even got a bell over here in this corner, and then it's all finished off with a lovely festive trim. So as you can see, there's a lot of different techniques and stitches involved in this blanket, which we hope will make it really interesting and fun for everyone. But if you're new to crochet, don't worry at all. As anyone who's done a Sirdar crochet along before will know, we start off really easy. We show you in the video tutorials exactly how to do each stitch and technique and build it up week by week so that you'll be guided every step of the way with the videos showing you how to do each new technique as it's introduced to the blanket. So for week 1, as I said, we're starting off nice and easy. So we're going to start off with the nice list, this section here, and we're going to start off with the squares for the stocking and Santa's hat, just the background square for those. We'll be adding the embellishments like the hat, the stocking and the writing later. So let's get cracking with how to do it. To make the nice list panel, you will need 2 balls of zest and 1 ball of cream, but we're going to start off just using 1 ball of zest to start with, and we'll bring in the other 2 balls later. So take off the yarn band and find the end of your yarn, and then I like to pull off a generous amount to get started, just so I'm not tugging on the ball as I'm crocheting. And then we start by making a slip knot in the end of our yarn. Make sure you leave a tail long enough so that you can weave it in at the end, about that sort of length, 10 centimetres or so, I find is normally fine. So to make a slip knot, you make a loop and then just push up the end of your yarn through that loop and pull it tight. Then insert your hook into the slip knot, into the loop, sorry, and tighten it up, not too tight, around the end of your hook. Then the first row of the nice list, we're going to make 37 foundation treble crochet stitches. So I'm going to show you how to make these slowly, step by step. So the very first foundation treble crochet stitch is actually made using chains, so it's slightly different to all of the rest of them. So the first foundation treble crochet stitch is actually 3 chains, and that counts as your first foundation treble. So to make a chain, you wrap the yarn around your hook and pull it through the loop on your hook. Make sure not to do it too tightly. And we're going to do that 3 times. So the second time, wrap it round again and pull it through the third time. Then you can see we've got 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, and that counts as the first foundation treble crochet of the row. Then to make your actual foundation treble crochets, you wrap the yarn around your hook again and insert it into that first chain that you made, so the third chain from your hook. And I like to insert it into, so the front of your chain, you can see you've got 2 strands. I like to insert it under that back third strand on the back. And then you wrap the yarn around your hook one more time and pull it through just that chain, so then you've got 3 loops on your hook. Now if this were a normal treble crochet, you might know you'd just wrap the yarn around your hook, pull it through 2 loops and then do that again. But this is a foundation treble crochet, so we do things ever so slightly differently. Before we do that final 2 steps of a treble, we're going to make a chain. So we just wrap the yarn around our hook and pull it through this first loop on our hook, and that's a chain made, which will be at the bottom of the foundation treble crochet stitch. And then we finish it off as you would a normal treble crochet. So you wrap the yarn around your hook, pull it through 2 loops, the first 2 loops, so you've got 2 loops left on your hook, wrap it round again and pull it through those last 2 loops, so you've got 1 loop on your hook, and that's your second stitch made of this row, but your first sort of proper foundation treble crochet, as it were. I'll show you that one more time. I know it looks quite complicated, but actually once you get the hang of it and get into the swing of it, it's much easier than it first seems, especially if you can already treble crochet. You just need to remember to do that chain before you finish off your stitch. So to make the next one, you wrap the yarn around your hook, insert it in the chain that was at the bottom of your previous foundation treble crochet. So there'll be 2 strands at the bottom, and you insert your hook under both of them like that. Then you wrap the yarn around your hook and pull it through that chain, so under those 2 strands. So you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Then before we finish off the treble, we're going to chain 1. So we wrap the yarn around our hook, pull it through that first loop once, so we've still got 3 loops on our hook. Then we finish it off as a normal treble crochet, so wrap the yarn around, pull it through 2 loops, wrap the yarn around and pull it through the other 2 loops. So that's 3 foundation treble crochets made. I'll just talk you through it again slowly. Wrap the yarn around your hook, insert it through the chain at the bottom of the previous stitch under those 2 strands, wrap the yarn around your hook and pull it through that chain. So we've got 3 loops on our hook. We make a chain by wrapping it round and pulling it through 1 loop, and then we finish off our treble crochet as normal. Wrap it round and pull it through 2 loops, wrap it round and pull it through 2 loops. And then you just keep repeating this process as many times as you need. So in this case we need 37 foundation treble crochet stitches to complete the row. So you can see that once you get into the swing of it, it is quite quick and easy to do. And of course, feel free to pause this video and re-watch the slow working of this stitch as many times as you need so that you can fully get the hang of it. And once you do get the swing of it, get into the swing of it, it is really easy and quick to do. You'll see that my work is arranged slightly differently perhaps to how you'd normally work a row of crochet. Normally when you're working in rows, you'll be working across in this direction if you're right-handed. But I find with foundation stitches like this, I find it easier to have my work like this, sort of vertically, so the row is coming towards me. You might find it better to hold it in a different way, but that's the most comfortable way I find to work it. One thing to be aware of is that when you're making the chain, if you hold your hook across at right angles to the row, just make sure you're not pulling that too tight or too loose, because that will make your row curve. But if the 3 loops are nice and straight and your hook is at a nice right angle to your work, then when you make the chain, it will keep your foundation row running along nice and straight without it bending at all. Now, when you're working a crochet project made in rows, you might also know of the probably more common way of starting it off by making a chain, a long chain, and then working back along, working your first row of stitches into that chain. This can be quite fiddly sometimes, working into a chain, and it can also be difficult keeping the tension or getting the tension of your chain right to match how tightly you crochet your actual stitches into it. I find that foundation stitches like this have the advantage that you can keep track of your tension more easily, and you don't have that fiddly step of working into a chain initially. I find it much easier working into the bottom of the previous stitch and then making a chain rather than working into a chain. And also I find the foundation stitches much easier to count than chain stitches, just because they're much bigger than a chain, so it's easier to keep track of how many stitches you've done. So the row's growing quite quickly now, but there's still a few more stitches to go to get to 37. Just getting a bit more yarn. You might notice that the way I hold my crochet hook and yarn is different perhaps to the way that you hold yours, and that's absolutely fine. There's no single right way to hold your crochet hook or your yarn. You should just do whichever is most comfortable and feels right to you. One thing I would suggest though is that when you find your preferred way of holding your crochet hook and your yarn, that you stick with that way and use it consistently throughout a whole project, because if you change how you hold your hook or your yarn, this can affect how tight your crochet stitches are. And if your crochet stitches become tighter or looser as you're crocheting, then you'll have some parts of your project working up bigger than they're supposed to be, and other parts might be smaller. So to get nice, consistent, even stitches, make sure you hold your hook and your yarn the same way throughout your whole project. I think I've still got a little bit further to go. Since I've been talking to you, I've been losing count of how many, or haven't been counting how many stitches I've done, so I will stop to count them all again shortly. One way you might like to keep track of your crochet stitches is with stitch markers, which can be great for that kind of thing. You could say this row has 37 stitches in total, so you could count 10 stitches, then put a stitch marker in and put another stitch marker in after every 10 stitches to avoid the need of having to keep counting all the way to 37, although 37 isn't too many really, is it? So I'm just going to pop this down now and count how many stitches I've done to see how many more are needed. So remember, this chain three chains that we did at the start of the row counts as one stitch, and then it's quite easy to see each other distinctive stitch. So it'll have 2 strands at the top, and then there'll be a little, if you wiggle your work, you'll be able to see that there's a significant gap between each stitch, so they're quite easy to make out. So with counting this as our first stitch, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30, and 2 more. So I've got 32. I need to do 5 more foundation treble crochet to complete the row. And all in all, I think that process is much quicker than doing a chain and working back into that. That's 2, 3, 4, and the last one coming up. Just need a little bit more yarn for it. And then when I reach the end of the row, because the stitch count is so important, I always double check, especially on this very first row, that I've got the right number of stitches. So I'll just count them again, remembering that the 3 chains at the start count as a stitch. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20, 2, 4, 6, 8, 30, 2, 4, 6, 7. So we've got 37 stitches, foundation treble crochet stitches, and that's row 1 of the nice list made. So having completed row 1, you will need to turn your work over, which is as simple as it sounds. You literally just turn it over, and then we're going to work row 2. So put your hook back into your loop. I was just making sure that I had it the right way around, and when you take it out, you always want to make sure that you have the strand that's coming from the ball going down the front of your hook. So turn your work over, and then row 2 is simply 37 treble crochet stitches. Now to make the first one, it's not a normal treble crochet. The first stitch of the row is just going to be simply 3 chains. 1, 2, 3. Now if you look, you can see that these 3 chains come out of this last foundation treble crochet of the previous row, and because these are counting as the first treble of this row, we're going to make the next actual treble into this next stitch. So to make the first proper treble, which is the second stitch of the row, we wrap the yarn around our hook, insert it into the top of the penultimate foundation treble crochet of the previous row. So if you look at the top, those 2 strands and you want your hook to go under both of those strands, then you wrap the yarn around your hook and pull it through the work, so under both of those 2 strands. So you've got 3 loops on your hook. Wrap the yarn around your hook, pull it through the first 2 loops, wrap the yarn around your hook and pull it through the last 2 loops. So you've got 1 loop on your hook, and that's the second stitch of the row and the first proper treble crochet stitch made. And then we're just going to continue that all the way along to the last stitch. So wrap the yarn around your hook, insert it into the top of the next stitch under the top 2 strands, wrap the yarn around your hook, pull it through, so there's 3 loops, wrap your yarn around, pull it through 2 loops, wrap your yarn around and pull it through the next 2 loops, and keep repeating that process all the way along until you reach the end of the row. When I'm crocheting from balls of yarn like this, I always like to make sure that the yarn I'm working with is loose and not I'm not having to pull on the ball to sort of unwind the yarn as I work, because if this piece of yarn that you're working with has any tension in it, then this can obviously make your stitches tighter. And if that varies, if it's some parts of your work, the yarn you're working with is tighter than others, and your stitches are tighter than others, then you're not going to get nice, even stitches. So always make sure your working yarn is loose. I'm just taking a bit more from the ball now, and then that will help you keep your stitches nice and even. Another way to try and get nice even stitches is to try and make sure that you always sit in the same sort of position and make sure you're comfortable when you crochet, because if you're uncomfortable or sitting in a different position to normal, all these things can affect how tightly you crochet, and might mean that one day when you're working on your project your stitches are tighter than another day. So always try to make sure you're relaxed and comfortable and then sitting in a similar sort of position as normal when you're crocheting. Of course, it's not always possible, because we like to crochet in different places, but if you can, just make sure you are holding your work in the same way each time. So this is quite a nice, easy row to get started, and then once we finish this row, we'll get on to the more interesting part, where we'll start working on the nice list. There's just a few more stitches to go to get to the end of the row. Now you may be wondering why we've got 2 balls of zest. It's not because we're going to use a whole ball and need to get onto a second ball just from this panel, but it's because we're going to be working from 2 different balls at the same time, which I will show you shortly. So when you get to the end of the row, remember that that first stitch of the foundation row was actually a chain 3. So at the moment I've done a treble crochet into the first proper foundation treble, but I still need to remember to make sure that I do a stitch also into the top of that chain. And this can be something that, especially if you're new to crochet or working in rows, it can be something that can be easy to miss. So make sure you don't skip that chain. So you just find the top of it, put your hook under the top 2 strands of that chain and make your treble crochet into that chain to complete the row, and that is the end of row 2. So when you get to the end of row 2, you're going to turn your work over again, ready to start row 3. I haven't mentioned it yet, but there is a right side and a wrong side to your work. So row 1, all the odd numbered rows were worked on the right side, and all the even numbered rows, so row 2, is made on the wrong side. So now we're on to row 3, we're on the right side again, which basically means we're looking at, as you work, we're looking at the front of your work. And if you lose track as you're crocheting, just remember that the tail at the end of row 1 will be, if you're right-handed, it will be on the right-hand side. If you're left-handed, it will be on the left-hand side. So when the tail is in the bottom right corner, you're looking at the right side of your work for right-handers, and the other way around for left-handers. So for row 3, we're going to start incorporating some cream yarn using the intarsia technique. So we're going to continue using the first ball of zest that we started with. We're also going to use 1 ball of cream. I'm going to pop this up here ready to use, and we're going to use the second ball of zest because we've got all these balls in our pack, so rather than making a bobbin at this stage, it's easier just to work from the ball. So I've got the other 2 balls of yarn ready, and then we're going to follow the instructions for row 3. So we start the row as we did the previous row by making 3 chains to count as that first treble crochet stitch. Then we make 1 treble crochet into the next stitch, so into the second stitch along the row. And then we're also going to be doing, as well as intarsia crochet, we're going to be doing a little bit of shaping so that the nice list looks like a piece of paper with a bit of a flick at each end. So the next stitch you're going to work is actually 2 trebles crochet stitches made into the same stitch. But this is also, the second of these, is also the final treble crochet of this row made with this first ball of zest. So I'm going to stop that second treble crochet at this stage before doing the final yarn over and pull through. I'm going to leave this yarn off to one side, making sure that I drop it towards the back of my work, and then I'm going to pick up the cream yarn, wrap it over my hook and pull it through those last 2 loops so that this treble crochet is made all in zest, and then I've got the cream yarn on my hook ready to make the next stitch in cream. Now because we did 2 trebles in the same stitch there in zest, we want to keep the stitch count of each row the same, so we've increased the number of stitches there by 1. We're now going to do a decrease. We're going to do a treble crochet 2 together into the next 2 stitches. We're also going to learn the technique of doing these into the back loop only. So whereas before we've been inserting our hook under both the top 2 strands, when you work in the back loop only, you just insert it under the back strand or the back loop of that previous stitch. So to make the treble crochet back loop only, you wrap the cream yarn around your hook, insert your hook into the back of the 2 strands of that previous stitch, wrap the yarn around your hook, pull up a loop, so we've got 3 on our hook, wrap it round, pull it through those first 2 loops on your hook. Now we're doing a treble crochet 2 together back loop only, so before we finish off this treble we're going to do the same process again into the next stitch. So we wrap the yarn around our hook, insert it under the back loop of the next stitch, wrap the yarn around your hook, pull it through, so you've now got 4 loops on your hook, wrap the yarn around your hook, pull it through the first 2, so you'll now have 3 loops on your hook, wrap your yarn around your hook, pull it through all 3 loops. So you've got just 1 loop on your hook. And at this stage you might find that this top loop has got a bit loose, but just give a little tug on the end of your cream yarn to tighten it up. Not too much, just as much as you want, and you can always do that later on as well when you're weaving in the end, so don't worry about that too much at the moment. And then the next step is to continue working in cream with 22 trebles, normal trebles, but worked into the back loop only again. So we just do treble crochets as we did before in the previous row, but only making sure you insert your hook into the back loop. And the reason that we're doing these stitches into the back loop only as opposed to the normal way through both loops is because it just gives a slightly straighter edge to the bottom of this cream section. Just get a bit more yarn to work with. So I don't know if you can see, but because we haven't put the cream stitches around that front loop as well, the front loop at the top of row 2 gives a nice straight line, a straight edge between the cream and the zest. So I've done 2, 4, 6 trebles so far, and I'm doing 22 altogether. So there's a few more to go. And I should have mentioned as well that as this is the front side, the right side of your work, when you joined that cream yarn at the beginning, make sure you leave the tail going out on the wrong side of your work so that you can weave it in on the wrong side. If you don't, it doesn't matter, you can just, oh, I think I've gone through 2 loops there. There we go. If for some reason you forgot and the end of your cream yarn is on the right side of your work when it should be on the wrong side, you can just poke your crochet hook through and grab it and pull it through quite easily. So we're getting close to the end now. A few more to go, and then I will count again to check how many I've done. And then we'll change to zest and do a bit more shaping with treble crochet 2 together and 2 treble crochets in the same stitch to give the same sort of bend at the other end of the row as well. So I'll just count these stitches. So we had a treble crochet 2 together to start with, so that's those 2 legs there going up to a single stitch at the top, and then we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 20. I only needed 22, so I've done too many, I've done 25. So I'm just I only needed those 2, so I've done 3 too many, so I'm just going to frog back and undo those 3 stitches and put my hook back into that loop. And then the last thing to do with the cream is 2 trebles back loop only into the same stitch. So I'll work 1 and then another one into that same stitch. Now I'm going to change colour again, so remember when you change colour you do it at the end on the final part of the previous stitch. So I'm not going to complete that treble crochet in cream, but I'm going to pick up the yarn from my second ball of zest, make sure to leave an end to weave in, wrap it over my hook and then pull it through those 2 loops ready to start crocheting in zest, and then I'll just leave that end of zest at the back of my work. Now we've finished crocheting in cream, so we don't need to work in the back loop only anymore. We're just going to be working into the front loops, and we're going to do 1 treble crochet 2 together in Zest. So we wrap the yarn over our hook, insert it into the next stitch, wrap the yarn over and pull up a loop. So we've got 3 loops on our hook, wrap the yarn over, pull it through 2 loops. Then before we finish off the treble crochet as we would normally, we're going to do the same process again into the next stitch. So we wrap the yarn over our hook, insert it into the next stitch, wrap the yarn over, pull up a loop. It says 4 on your stitch, wrap the yarn over and pull it through the first 2 loops on your stitch. So you've got 3 on your hook, wrap the yarn over and pull it through all 3 loops on your hook to complete that treble crochet 2 together. And as before, if you find that the top of the stitch is a bit loose, you can just pull on that tail to tighten it up a little bit, but you can equally also do that when you get to the point of weaving that end in, so don't worry about it if it's too tight at the moment. And then to complete the row, we just do 7 more treble crochets in Zest up to the end of the row. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have to remember, as always, that the last treble crochet is going to be worked into the top of the chain 3 from the previous row. So this very last one, we'll yarn over, insert our hook through the top of that chain, under those 2 strands, yarn over, pull through and finish off the treble crochet. And that is the end of row 3. So that's row 3 complete. So we're going to turn our work over again, ready to start row 4. Now, if you simply turn your work over and start crocheting, because we're working with 3 different strands of yarn, things are going to start to get a bit twisted and tangled. So you want to make sure that you move your balls of yarn around as you turn your work, so that they're on the right sides, ready for the next row of crochet. So your cream will stay in the middle, but your 2 balls of Zest will switch ends, and just make sure you move them around in the same direction that you turn your work. So we're now working on row 4, which is the wrong side. So all of the strands of yarn, the tails and the working yarn, are all going to be hanging down the front of your work. So we're going to start this row with 3 chains for the first treble, as always, and then we're going to make 5 trebles into the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops. 5. And at this point you should have 2 stitches left in Zest. And to continue the shaping of the nice list, we're going to make 1 treble crochet 2 together across these 2 stitches, just in the same way that we did before. Just getting a little bit more yarn to make it with. And this is the last stitch that we're making in Zest. Remember that a treble crochet 2 together, although it's made over 2 stitches, it only counts as 1 stitch when you're looking at the stitch count. And because this is the last stitch in Zest, we stop before the final yarn over and pull through. So we're actually going to stop with 3 loops on our hook. Then we pick up the cream, making sure you pick it up at the front of your work. You might want to, depending on how tightly that last stitch in cream is looking, you might want to just give it a little tug to make sure it's tight enough if it's loose, but if not, just pick it up, wrap the yarn over your hook and pull it through those 3 loops. So you've got a loop of cream on your stitch, on your hook, sorry, ready to start the next stitch. You can see there's a fair bit of cream yarn here going up to that stitch. That's absolutely fine because this is the wrong side, the back side of your work. But just make sure you don't make this too tight, otherwise it's going to pull the stitches and zest down towards it. So just hold your work nice and loosely and evenly so that you've got enough cream yarn there that it's not pulling on your work. And then in cream we're going to make 2 treble crochets into the next stitch, because we've reduced our stitch count here by 1 by decreasing, doing the treble crochet 2 together. So to make it back up to the right number where we should be, we're going to do 2 trebles into the next stitch, and this is creating the shaping of the nice list. So we've got 2 into that stitch, and from now on when we're working in cream we're just doing treble crochets or treble crochet 2 together as normal, which means under, working with the hook inserted under both loops. It was just that first row that we made into the back loop only to give that definition between the cream and the zest. So after we've done 2 trebles into that same stitch, we're going to do 22 trebles all the way along in the cream, just continuing along, making 22 trebles. And this will take you, once you've done these 22, you'll have 2 cream trebles left. Oops, just lost it there. Make sure I put it through the right way so that the working yarn is going down the front of my hook. Get a bit more cream to work with. So as I was saying, when you've finished working in cream or working the trebles, you'll have 2 cream trebles left to crochet into. Because of the way you have to move the balls of yarn around when you're working with intarsia crochet, I often find it easier to do it on a table or a nice smooth surface, because then I can just, when I turn over at the end of the row, I can just slide them around into their new positions and they stay put and they don't roll around or get in a tangle. It just helps me keep all the yarn organised. So we're getting there now, nearly at the end of this cream section. I think that's 21, 22, and then we end our working cream with 1 treble crochet 2 together across these last 2 cream stitches. So yarn over, insert into that first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So we've got 2 loops on our hook. Repeat that again into the next stitch, pull through 2 loops. We've got 3 loops on our hook, but rather than completing that treble crochet 2 together in cream, we're going to pick up our second ball of zest, yarn over and pull through with zest, so that the treble crochet 2 together, it's all made in cream, but we've got zest on our hook ready to make the next stitch. And as before, there will be a short length of zest here reaching up from that previous row up to here, but that's absolutely fine because it's on the wrong side of your work. So then to finish off the row in zest, we're going to make 2 trebles into the next stitch. Just make sure, sometimes this strand here can hide the stitch that you're working into, so just make sure you look carefully and don't miss it, but we're going to make, it will be a zest stitch, and we're going to make 2 treble crochets into that zest stitch, and then finish off the row with 3 more trebles. So 2 into the 1, 2 into those, and then the final 3rd treble into the top of the chain 3. So 1, 2, and then the last one into that chain there at the end of the row. There we go. Now we're looking at the back, but as you can see, the slope or the shaping of the list is starting to become more visible. So there's going to be a little bit more in the next row, and then it'll go up straight for a bit, and there'll be a bit more at the top. One thing to note if you are working left-handed is just that your list is going to be sloping in the opposite direction to mine and those shown in the photos, but that's absolutely fine. But if you're wondering why yours looks slightly different if you're left-handed, that's the reason, and it's nothing to worry about. So that's row 4 finished. We're going to turn our work again, ready to start row 5. And just remember, as you turn your work over, to move your yarn around in the same way to avoid it getting in a tangle. Now on row 5, just move these out of the way. On row 5 we're working on the right side, or the front side of our work again, so all of the ends of yarn, any carries, are going to be on the back of our work. So we start row 5 by chaining 3. Now, having said to remove your yarn carefully to avoid tangles, I realised I've got one. I'm just going to sort that out. There we go. So we're going to start the row by chaining 3. 1, 2, 3 for the first treble. Then we're going to do 3 more trebles. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to continue the shaping of the nice list. This is the last row with this kind of shaping. We're going to continue it by making 2 trebles into this next stitch. 1, 2. But on the last treble we don't do the final yarn over and pull through because we're changing colour to cream. So we pick up the cream yarn, again be careful not to pull it too tightly, but just hold it loosely up the back of your work, yarn over and pull through cream, so you've got cream on your hook ready to make the next stitch in cream. Now the next stitch is going to be treble crochet 2 together, which we do in the same way as we have been doing before. So treble crochet 2 together in cream, and then 22 trebles along in cream, and this will take you to the last but one stitch in cream, so you'll have one cream stitch left once you've made your 22 trebles in cream. Just getting a bit more cream yarn to work with. The nice thing about this piece of Intasha crochet, I think, is that when you're doing it, you're always working in one colour, cream for example, into the cream stitches of the previous row. Apart from when you first start using cream, you're never going to be working cream into a zest stitch or zest into a cream stitch. Apart from at the end, when at the top of the list, then you'll work zest along it. So it's quite easy to check that you're doing things correctly, because if you find yourself trying to make a cream stitch into a zest stitch, then you shouldn't be doing that. Check your stitch count and make sure you've got got the right number, because all your cream stitches should be being made into other cream stitches, and all your zest stitches should be being made into zest stitches. So we're nearly there now with our 22 trebles, and once we've done them, like I said, there'll be one stitch left in cream. Just need a little bit more yarn for this last stitch. So into this last stitch we're going to work 2 trebles in cream before changing colour to zest. So we don't complete that final treble, we wait, we stop with 2 loops on our hook, leave the cream yarn to the back of the work, pick up the zest, yarn over and pull it through, again taking care not to make it too tight. Then we're going to do a treble crochet 2 together in zest, and then to finish off the row we make 5 more trebles in zest. That's 2, 3, 4, and the last one into the top of that chain 3 from the previous row. Sometimes it needs a little bit of a wiggle to get your hook into the chain like I'm doing here. There we go. And then that is row 5 completed. Okay, so that's the end of the shaping at the bottom of the list. So now for several rows we're just going to go straight up. So this bit's quite easy because the rule that I mentioned earlier, that you always make a zest stitch into a zest stitch and a cream stitch into a cream stitch, applies. So we're going to turn our work over, move our yarn around again, and we're working on the wrong side here, so all of our yarn is coming down the front of the work, and we're going to chain 3 for the first treble of the row. 1, 2, 3, and then make 5 trebles in zest. So on each side of the nice list there's going to be 6 stitches in zest. So here we've got chain 3 and then 5 regular trebles. 2, it's not 2 is it, 4, 5, and the 6th stitch, 6. When you drop a yarn, when you're working on the wrong side, make sure you drop it down the front of your work, not down the back, because you want all these strands here to be on the wrong side when you pick up your yarn again. So you pick up your cream when you're changing to cream at the end of that stitch, and then there's no shaping anymore, as I said, so we're just going to do 25 trebles all the way across in cream. And again, just make sure that one can be hidden behind this strand, so just make sure you don't miss any stitches that might be hidden behind the carried yarn. Work your way across in cream to the end of this row. So once you get going with this section, you don't really need to count, because you can just see what to do. So it can be quite relaxing, this part. You might like to listen to something or watch something while you're doing it. Once the counting part is over. Getting there now. A few more to go. Oops. Just need a bit more yarn. There we go. Last few stitches in cream, and then we'll switch back to zest to finish off this row. One more in cream. Remember to drop the yarn at the front of your work. Pick up the zest, changing colour, and then we finish the row off with 6 stitches in zest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 the chain again for that last stitch, 6, and that is row 6 complete. And then you just repeat row 6 up until the end of row 33, so until you have 33 rows in total. And then there's 3 more rows of shaping to get the shaping of the nice list at the top, which is done in the same way as these bottom rows, but just to get the slope going over to the other side. And I will meet you again at the end of row 33, ready to do the final 3 shaping rows of the nice list, rows 34 to 36, and completing this panel. So we've reached the end of row 33 now, which is the final bit of the straight part of the nice list. So we've got this bit of shaping here at the bottom, and then straight up the sides, and we're just going to do a final bit of shaping to the nice list here in the next 3 rows to bend it over in the other direction. So we'll turn our work over and move our yarn around as before. Taking care not to get any twists or tangles. And then we're ready to start row 34. So row 34 starts with 3 chains, and then 3 trebles in the next 3 stitches. And then 1 treble 2 together for the next 2 stitches. Now remember, we're working on the back side of our work here, so you need to make sure that your yarn is dropped to the front of your work when you stop using it. As the piece of crocheted fabric gets bigger, it can be a bit more fiddly to do this, so just make sure you get things arranged in a way that you can do this. As you can see, I've just folded the bottom of the panel under here. Then change colour to cream, and then we're going to work 2 trebles into the next cream stitch. Two, and then 22 more trebles in cream. And remember, if you're left-handed, your nice list is going to be sloping off in the opposite direction to mine, but that won't matter at all. nearly there now, a few more stitches. And then we'll end this run of cream stitches after the 22 trebles. We'll end it with one treble 2 together to have the corresponding slope or shaping at the other end of the row, or the other side of the nice list. So after you've done 22 trebles in cream, oops, there we go, that's 22. There should be, and there are 2 cream stitches left, and we're going to do a treble 2 together over those 2 stitches. Drop the yarn, just unwind a bit more so I've got space to do this. Drop the yarn down on the wrong side of your work, and then change colour to zest. Then we do 2 trebles in zest in the next stitch. 1, 2, and then end the row with 5 trebles in zest in the last 5 stitches, including the chain 3. 2, 3, 4, and last one, 5. And that's row 34 complete. So we'll move on to row 35 now. So turn the work over again and take care to sort out your yarn placement as you do it. So I'm just going to move my balls of yarn around. Again, ready for that. And row 35 starts as always with 3 chains and then 5 trebles into the next 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, oops, didn't quite pull it through all the way there, 4, just going to unwind a bit more of this, and the 5th one, and then this is followed by 2 trebles into that same last stitch, and then change to cream at the end of that stitch. And then the cream starts with 1 treble 2 together over the next 2 stitches, the first 2 stitches in cream, and then 22 trebles, which will end just before the last 1 stitch before the last cream stitch. Get a bit more cream unwound. So we're nearly at the end of those 22 trebles in cream, and that's 22, and then into that last one we work 2 trebles in cream and we change to zest at the end of that second treble as before. Then we work 1 treble 2 together and end with 3 trebles in the last 3 stitches of the row. 1, 2, and the last one into the top of the chain 3, 3. Then we've just got one more row to go to finish off the list itself. So we're going to turn it over again and get our yarn organised. And we're ready to go, and we're working excuse me, we're working on the wrong side again now, so all the yarn is being dropped to the front of the work. So we start row 36 with 3 chains, then 1 treble into the next stitch, and then 1 treble 2 together over the next 2 stitches, and change colour. Make sure you drop the yarn to the front, don't forget, like I nearly did, and then change colour to cream. And then the cream starts with 2 trebles into that first stitch, and then 22 trebles across, and you'll end with 2 stitches, 2 cream stitches left at the end after you've done your 22 trebles. So I'll do those 22 trebles across. Okay, coming to the end now, just one more treble in cream, so that's 22 trebles, and then we're going to end with 1 treble 2 together over those last 2 cream stitches, and then change to zest, remembering to drop the cream yarn to the front of, well, to the wrong side, which is the front at the moment as you're working on it. And then we change colour to zest, and then we're going to do 2 trebles in that first zest stitch, and then end the row with 7 more trebles in the next, over the next 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the last one into the chain. There we go, and that is the end of row 36. Now we don't need the cream yarn anymore, and we also don't need this part of the zest yarn, so we can cut these yarns, leaving a tail for weaving in later. So that's the cream yarn finished with, and I'll snip this zest yarn as well. There we go. And then we're going to finish off the rest of this panel just using this one ball of zest yarn that is attached here. So we're ready for the last 2 rows now, and we're going to put our hook back into the work, turn it over. No need to worry about any yarns getting in a tangle because there's only one ball again now. Just unwind a bit more, ready for these last 2 rows. There we go. Now, row 37 starts, of course, with 3 chains, and then we're going to work 8 trebles, which will go into these next 8 stitches in Zest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we're going to continue with trebles, but we're going to do them slightly differently when we're working into the cream stitches. So there's 25 stitches in cream, and the next 25 trebles are all going to be worked into the back loop only. And remember, this means that when we get to the part of the treble where we insert the hook into the stitch, rather than inserting it under both loops like we normally do, we're just going to insert it, both strands, we're just going to insert it under the back strand. And what that's going to do is it's just going to give, as it did at the bottom, a nice straight edge to the top of the nice list. So we're going to do 25 trebles in the back loops only of these next stitches, which are all the cream stitches. So coming to the end of these 25 trebles in the back loop only, just a few more to go. 2 more now, and then we complete the row by working 3 trebles into these last 3 stitches in Zest, and these ones are just worked as a normal treble, which means under both strands as you would usually. 1, 2, and the final one. Ooh, having to wiggle it a bit to get it into the top of that chain. There we go. 3. So that's row 37 finished. As you can see, there's a really nice straight edge to the top of the nice list because we've just worked in the back loops only on those stitches. So we'll turn our work over and do the final row, row 38. And this is just a really straightforward row. We're just going to chain 3 for the first stitch and then treble all the way across, doing normal trebles, nothing fancy, right to the end of the row. So in total, including that chain 3, there will be 37 stitches at the end of the row. So here we are, nearly at the end of the row now, just a few more stitches to go, 3 left, and the last one working into the top of the chain, and then we can fasten off. So to do that, I just pull the loop a bit bigger than normal, just so I don't accidentally undo the stitch I've just made, snip the yarn, leaving a tail to weave in, and then just poke that tail through the loop and pull it tight. And so that last row was on the wrong side, so we'll turn it over to see the finished panel. So we've got a nice list all ready later to add some writing on to, and that's the finished nice list. now we're going to make the 2 solid granny squares for the Santa's hat and stocking squares, and we're going to do that using the zest yarn that we used previously. So we're going to start these off with a magic ring. So you wrap the yarn around your fingers up and down once, twice, and then a third time, and then you poke your hook under the first 2 strands and pull that third strand under those 2, and then make a chain. And then we're going to work the first round of stitches into this ring. So we start off by doing 3 more chains so that we have 4 chains in total, and these 4 chains count as the first treble stitch, or a treble stitch, and 1 chain for a corner chain space. Then we continue working around this ring. We do 3 treble crochets into the ring. 1, 2, 3, and those 3 treble crochets make one side of the square. Then we do 2 chains for a corner chain space, then another 3 treble crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 more chains, another 3 treble crochets for the next side of the square, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 chains for the next corner. So as you can see, we've got 3 groups of 3 trebles now, plus we've got this treble from the chains we made at the start. So for this final side of the square, we've got the last treble of it already here, so we're just going to do 2 trebles now, 1, 2, and then before we join, because obviously there's a bit of a gap at the moment, just make that loop a bit bigger so I can take my hook out, we're going to tighten up this ring in the circle. So I turn my work round like this so that I've got the tail at the top, and then I just give it a pull and see which of these 2 strands is the one that tightens up. So pulling on it now, and it's this one that's tightening. So rather than keep pulling this one and let this one tighten and then I just have this one all loose, I'm now going to pull on this one, which will tighten up the loose strand, and pull it really tight to get a nice snug centre to your granny square. And then once you've got that loop tightened up, you just find your tail again and pull on that to tighten up the other loop, taking care not to get your yarn caught up in it. So then you can see we've got a really nice tight centre to our granny square. So then we can put our hook, get this tail out the way, we can put our hook back in the loop, making sure the loop's the right way around, and then we're going to do a slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the initial 4 chains we made. Can be a little bit tricky to see the beginning of those chains because they've got sort of squished up into the middle, so instead of counting 1, 2, 3, you can count backwards. So you can see this is the top of this treble, so that would be the 4th chain, and we're going to do our slip stitch into the chain before that, which is this one here. Just wiggle my hook through it, and then to do a slip stitch you just put your hook through the stitch or the chain where you're going to make the slip stitch, wrap your yarn over your hook, and then pull it through both the stitch that you've just inserted it through and the loop that was on your hook, and then just pull it nice and tight. And that is round 1 of our square completed. So to start round 2, the next round, we're going to do a slip stitch into this chain space, this corner chain space. So we just insert our hook into that big space in the corner, wrap the yarn over our hook, pull it through the hole and through the loop on our hook, and again pull it quite tight. And then we're going to start round 2 with 4 chains, which again, as in the previous round, these count as 1 treble and 1 chain for the chain space. Then we work 2 more trebles into this same corner chain space. 1, 2, and then across these 3 trebles here, we're going to work 1 treble into each of them. So 3 more trebles across this side. 1, 2, 3, and then into this corner chain space we'll work 2 trebles, 1, 2, followed by 2 chains to make a new corner chain space, and then 2 more trebles, 1, 2, and then we keep doing the same thing around the square, working 1 treble into each of the trebles along the side, and into each corner chain space we work 2 trebles, 2 chains and 2 more trebles. So I'll keep doing that all around the square. Until we get back to the start. Oops. With squares like these, the first round is usually the fiddliest because you've not got much made yet that you're working into, but as they grow it becomes bigger and easier to work into. Do make sure you check your stitch count and make sure you don't miss any stitches on each side. Make sure that you get a treble into each of the trebles from the previous round, as well as those 2 trebles, 2 trebles into each corner chain space. Sometimes what can happen is that last treble into the corner chain space can bulge out a bit and hide the top of the first treble from the next side from the previous round. So make sure that you don't miss that treble, because that's quite an easy way to get your stitch count off, is if you miss that treble. So we'll end the round with 3 trebles into these trebles. Remember that this one was actually made from chains, so you might need to wiggle your hook a bit to get it into that chain in the right place. And once you've worked your 3 trebles into those 3 stitches, you need to do 1 more treble into this corner chain space. There is quite a bit of yarn here, but don't worry, just crochet over and around it all into that corner chain space and it will be fine. And then we're gonna, as before, finish the round with a slip stitch into the 3rd chain from this beginning chain 4. So there'll be, counting back from the previous treble, if that's easier, you'll have 1 unworked chain and then you do the slip stitch into that chain there. And you might be wondering why I've got 2 chains in each of these corners, and in this corner here I'm saying do 4 chains, 3 chains for the treble and 1 chain for the corner chain space. And the reason for that is that when you make that slip stitch into that 3rd chain, it pulls it to the right, and part of that 3rd chain there forms a bit of the corner chain space. So I find that that balances best for me and makes the square squarest, if that makes sense. So moving on to round 3, we start that, as with round 2, with a slip stitch into the chain space. Pull your slip stitches nice and tight when you make them. Chain 4, 2, 3, 4, 2 trebles into that corner chain space, and then 7 trebles across all of the previous trebles. My yarn's just got a bit bunched up here. There we go. So we've now got 7 trebles along that side, 3 from which were worked into the 3 from the first round, plus 2 at each end from the corner chain spaces. So we're going to work 7 all the way across to the next chain space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then as usual into the corners we work 2 trebles, 2 chains and 2 more trebles, and you just continue around in this way with 2 trebles, 2 chains, 2 trebles into each corner and 1 treble into each of the trebles from the previous round. Remembering that the last one's going to be into those chains again, so make sure you don't miss those, especially because the final treble into the chain space again, it can sort of go over them a bit, so you want to make sure you don't miss them at all. But I can see here that this is that chain there, so I'm going to push my hook into the chain and then make 1 final treble into this corner chain space and then complete the round with a slip stitch into the 3rd chain from that beginning 4 chain, and then that's round 3 completed. And as I said, you just continue this pattern of stitches all the way around until you've got 9 rounds. So I will continue doing that while you make yours as well, and then I'll meet you at the end of round 9. So here we are near the end of round 9 now, just the last few stitches to go, and at this point there will be 140 trebles all the way around round 9, which works out 35 on each side, and you can use the pattern to check your stitch count for the other rounds to make sure that you're keeping on track. The stitch count each side just increases by 4 each time. So then we'll do the final treble into that chain from the previous round. Work my hook through it. Then 1 last treble into that corner chain space. And then we're going to slip stitch again as usual into the 3rd chain from that beginning 4 chain. Pull the slip stitch tight and then we can fasten off. So we'll just snip the yarn and push the yarn end through that loop and pull it tight. And so that's the first solid granny square made, and you just need to repeat that process exactly the same for the second one. So the next step is to join the solid granny squares that we've just made onto the top and bottom of the nice list panel. So one's going to go above it like this, and one's going to go below it at the other end. So before you start, make sure you've got the right side of each panel facing you to start with. So the granny square you've just made on the nice list panel, it's quite easy to see because you'll have your strands of floated yarn on the back, so make sure those are on the back. And then to join them, we're going to want to have the two right sides facing each other. So I simply fold the granny square down over the nice list panel, so I've got these two edges lined up. Then we're going to join them with zest so it all matches. So start by making a slip knot and pop your hook through the loop, and then we'll join the yarn to this corner chain space of the solid granny square. And then we'll join it, so you do that by inserting your hook into that chain space and making a slip stitch. Wrap the yarn over your hook, pull it through the chain space and through the loop on your hook, and then pull on your yarn end to tighten it up. Then we're going to join this corner chain space to this corresponding treble stitch from the nice list panel. So we insert the hook through that treble, and we're going to join it with a slip stitch. So make sure you use the right end of your yarn, not the tail. Pick it up, wrap it around your hook, pull it through the stitch and through the loop on your hook, and then you've got those two corners joined. Then we're going to continue to work along, matching up the stitches one to one, but rather than inserting the hook through both loops each time, just move these tails out of the way, we're going to be working into the back loop only. So these are because we've got the right sides facing each other and the wrong sides on the outside, the back loops are essentially the outer loops. So when you look at the ends of these stitches, you'll see that they've each got two strands. So we insert our hook through the back loop, which is at the front of your work of this stitch, and make sure you don't miss any stitches through the back loop, which is at the back of your work. So it's, as I said, it's the outer loops, the way the work is arranged, of that one. So you'll have your hook through two strands, and we make a slip stitch through all of it. So wrap the yarn over your hook, pull it through both of those two loops and the loop on your hook, and then you just continue along in this way, joining corresponding stitches. So insert your hook through the two back loops or two outer loops of the corresponding stitches, wrap the yarn over and pull it through everything, and keep working along in this way, taking care not to make your slip stitches too tight because that will lead to bunching up, and also not too loose. So I like to tighten it up after I've put my hook through the two loops. And we just take your time, make sure you don't miss any stitches, and keep making slip stitches through the back or outer loops of the corresponding stitches to join it up as you go along. And in total you will make 35 slip stitches through the back loops only. And then at the end you'll be left with the corner chain space from the granny square and one more stitch from the top of the nice list. The reason we're working through the back or the outer loops is because it makes the join less visible from the front of the work. You get the two edges abutting each other and meeting nice and tightly, but the join itself is generally not really visible on the front of your work, it's just visible on the back, so it's quite a neat, clean way to join pieces of crochet together when you don't want to make a feature of the join itself. So keep working along in this way and I'll meet you at the end of the row. So we're just getting to the end of the row now, and this is the 35th slip stitch through the back loop only. So this has covered all of the trebles from that side of the solid granny square, and there's one last treble, or in this case a chain 3 at the end of the nice list panel. So we're just going to join the corner of the granny square to this chain 3 by putting our hook through the corner of the granny square, through the top of the chain 3, wiggle it through those loops, pull the yarn through everything and the loop on your hook, pull it nice and tight, and then you can fasten off. So you just snip the yarn and pull the yarn through the loop, and then I'll open it out and you can see that the nice list is joined onto the granny square, and it's a nice neat invisible join, which I'll show you the back. It's slightly raised along the back, but on the front you can't really see it, and the two panels are securely and neatly joined together. And then you just join the other solid granny square that you've made to the bottom of the nice list in exactly the same way, working through the outer or back loops only as you make the slip stitches all the way along. So now we've got our two solid granny squares, one joined above the nice list and another one joined at the bottom of the nice list. We're going to work 2 rows of edging, 1 row down each side, and this is just going to make our edges nice and straight and create clear stitches that we'll be able to work into later on in the blanket. So first of all, we'll work up the right hand side, so turn your work round and we're going to join zest yarn again, still working in zest, to this bottom right corner chain space of the granny square. So we join it by making a slip knot in the yarn and inserting our hook, and then insert your hook into that corner chain space, wrap the yarn over your hook, put it through everything including the loop on your hook, and just pull your tail tight to tighten it. And then we'll make 1 chain, which doesn't count as a stitch. Now, to get the right number of stitches along the edge of the blanket, we're not actually going to work any stitches into this corner chain space. The 1 chain that we've made doesn't and won't count as a stitch, it won't be worked into, but then we're going to continue along this edge working double crochets, and we're going to do this as follows. So the first double crochet is going to be made into the first treble crochet from this side of the solid granny square. So to make a double crochet, you insert your hook into the stitch under both loops. It's just a normal double crochet. Wrap the yarn around your hook and pull it up, so you've got 2 loops on your stitch. Wrap the yarn around your hook and pull it through again. And then we're going to continue along the side of the granny square, working 1 double crochet into each of the treble crochets along this side. So we insert the hook into the stitch, yarn over hook and pull up a loop. So we've got 2 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull it through. And we're going to continue in this way, working double crochets all along the 35 treble crochets from this side of the granny square. So by the time you get to the corner of the granny square here, you should have worked 35 double crochets. So I'll meet you at the end of this solid granny square and show you where to work the next double crochet stitches. So we're getting to the last few stitches now. So once you've worked those first 35 double crochets, you'll be at this corner chain space of the granny square, and you work 1 double crochet into that corner chain space, and then we're at the side of the nice list panel, and on this panel we're going to work 2 double crochets into the side of each row. And as I said, the stitch count is important, so you do need to keep track and make sure you're getting 2 into the side of each row. So you can work these just by making your stitches around the post of any chain at the start of the row, or by working it through the treble crochets themselves, finding gaps in the stitches. And you're going to work 2 into the side of each row like this, working all the way up the edge, and just continue in this way, and then I'll meet you again when we get to the top of the nice list panel. So we're nearly at the end or the top of the nice list panel now, just making the final double crochets into the nice list panel, and then we've got to the other solid granny square at the other end, and in this solid granny square we're going to work 1 double crochet into that first chain space, then a double crochet into each of these treble crochets, and a double crochet into the final chain space. So we didn't make one in the first corner chain space at the other end, but we are going to make one here to make sure that we have the right number of stitches that we'll need later on. So we've made our double crochet into the chain space, and then we continue along with double crochets into each of the 35 treble crochets from the granny square, and then I'll meet you at the end of this side when we get to the corner chain space again. So we're coming along to the end now, just working into the last few treble stitches, a couple more to go, and then we'll end this run of edging. I've just worked a double crochet into the last treble stitch, and we're going to end with another double crochet, the last double crochet worked into that corner chain space, and then we can fasten off as we have done before. So you can see that this just gives a nice, neat, tidy edge, especially over here where the 2 panels are joined, and also it gives a really clear edge that we can work into later. And then the next step is just to turn your work around and do exactly the same process working along the other side of the blanket, so you've got the same neat edging down both sides, and then that's that section of the blanket completed for now. The next step is to start making your train wheels. You're going to need 32 of these all together, ready for week 5. So we're going to start making them now. 16 are going to be in this colour combination of emerald and cream, and 16 of them are going to use royal, this lovely bright blue, and cream. So I'm going to show you how to make one now using royal and cream, but it's exactly the same process using emerald and cream. So these wheels use the tapestry crochet technique, which is similar to the intarsia that we used for the nice list, except that instead of leaving your yarn behind when you finish one section of colour, you carry it with you and make your later stitches over it as you go. So I'll show you how to do that. You start off by making a magic ring, as we did before with the royal, and after you've looped it around your fingers, you make a chain and then make 2 more chains. And these 3 initial chains count as 1 treble crochet. Then we're going to make 1 more treble crochet into the ring, but after that we're going to change colour, so we don't complete that treble crochet as we did before with the colour changes in the nice list. We're going to change colour on this final pull through to cream, so I'm just getting the cream ready. So take the cream yarn, wrap it over your hook and put it through those 2 loops. Then this working part of the royal yarn, we're going to crochet over that, so we'll put it with the other yarns forming the loop, and we're going to make the next stitches in cream yarn over all of these blue yarns. So get the tail out of the way to make sure you don't get muddled up. And we're going to make 2 treble crochets into this ring and over the blue yarn as we go. 1, 2, and after the second one we're going to change colour back to blue. Now each time you do this, because we're working into a ring, just push your stitches together to make sure that they're not too spaced apart, and then pick up the end of the blue yarn and put it through those 2 loops from the final step of that treble crochet in cream, and then we're going to do 2 treble crochets in blue. 1, 2. Before we finish that one, we drop the blue yarn, pick up the cream yarn again. Each time you pick up a different colour to start working with it, just give it a little tug and it tightens up the previous stitch that you made with that yarn, otherwise they can start to get a bit loose. Keep your stitches pushed nice and tight together. Pull through with that cream yarn so you've got it ready, and then make 2 treble crochets in cream, pausing before the final step of the second one so that you can change colour to the blue yarn again, and again giving it a little tug to tighten up that last stitch in blue, squishing up your stitches together and pulling it through. Then we're going to do 2 more in blue. 1, 2, change colour back to cream, pulling it, squishing up the stitches, ready for the final 2 stitches of the round in cream. 1, and we're going to do the join, the slip stitch join at the end of this round in blue, so we are going to change back to blue now in the final stage of this stitch in cream. So we've got blue on our hook ready to do the slip stitch, but before we make that slip stitch join we're going to tighten up our magic ring as we did before. So we turn it round, so we've got this tail of blue yarn at the top, give it a pull and see which of these two strands of blue tightens up. You can see it's that one, so then we pull on that one at the top to tighten up the other strand. Pull it nice and tightly to get that centre really closed up well, and then pull on the tail again to tighten up that loop, and then that's that round, or that's the magic ring closed. So the final step of round 1 is to join your round by making a slip stitch into the top of the chain 3 that you started the round with. But you also need to make sure that at the same time you carry the cream yarn up to the top of this stitch, so it's up at the height of these stitches ready for round 2. So to make the slip stitch, you insert your hook through the top of that chain 3 under those top 2 loops. Also place the cream yarn over your hook, and then wrap the royal yarn over your hook and put it through everything, including the loop on your hook, and pull that slip stitch nice and tight. And if you turn your work over, you'll see that the cream yarn has been secured with that slip stitch as well, and is now up at the height of these stitches ready to be used in round 2, which is also the final round of these wheels. So although there's quite a lot to make, there are only 2 rounds, so there's not masses of stitches. Once you get the hang of them, they're quite quick. So we start round 2 by making 3 chains, which counts as 1 treble, and then we're going to make 1 more treble into the same stitch, so also into the top of that chain 3, and we make that by crocheting over the cream yarn. Because this is tapestry crochet, we're crocheting over the carriage yarn as we go, and then we're going to make 2 more trebles in royal into the next stitch, and then change to cream on at the end of the second treble. So for that final yarn it over and pull through, we do it with the cream yarn ready to make some stitches in cream. And we're going to continue this round, and basically we're working 2 stitches into each stitch from the previous round, so we'll double the number of stitches, and we work cream stitches into cream stitches and royal stitches into royal stitches. So we'll work 2 cream stitches into this next stitch, working over the carried yarn, 2, and then 2 into the next stitch as well, and we'll change colour to blue in the final step of that last treble. And when we pick up the blue, just give it a gentle pull to tighten up that last treble that you made in blue, and make sure that it's fitting nice and snugly under the cream stitches. Yarn over and pull through, and then we'll make our 4 trebles, 2 pairs of trebles in royal into the next 2 stitches. So 1, 2, working over that cream yarn to carry it along, 1, 2, and then we're going to change colour to cream. One thing that can sometimes be a problem with tapestry crochet is the yarns that you're working with getting into a bit of a tangle and getting twisted together, but there's a simple way to avoid this. When you're using the 2 yarns, think of one as being your back yarn and one as your front yarn, and keep the balls in the same relative positions and the yarns in the same relative positions. So when you finish with one, like I have just now finished with the royal for now, and make sure I drop it towards the back, and then when I pick up the cream yarn to crochet with, I make sure I pick it up in front, because this is my front yarn, in front of the royal yarn, and wrap it round over my hook, so I'm ready to make the next 4 stitches in cream. Then when I finish crocheting with the cream yarn and want to switch back to the royal again, I'll drop the cream yarn to the front and pick up the royal from behind. So I'll show you that after I've finished making these 4 stitches in cream. 2 into the next stitch, and then 2 more into the stitch after that. So I've got the point I finished with my cream, I drop it to the front and I pick up the royal behind it, give it a little tug again, and I'm ready to keep going with my royal. And if you follow this method, always remember to drop your yarn and pick up your yarn from the right place, front or back, then your yarns won't get in a tangle. And this method also works if ever you're doing tapestry crochet with more than 2 colours. You just have a front, middle and back, or even more than that. You just have to make sure you always pick up and drop to the right position. So we're on to our last 4 stitches of the round now in cream, but we're going to keep crocheting over the royal yarn as we do this because we're going to need it for the final join. So we'll make 2 pairs of treble crochet in cream, 2, and then another 1, 2, and then we change to blue in that final step, and we're going to join the round by making a slip stitch with blue into the 3rd chain from the initial chain 3 that started the round. And this time this is the end of the wheel. We don't need to worry about carrying the cream yarn up because there aren't any further rounds. So we'll put our hook through the top of that chain 3, yarn over, pull it through everything, pull that slip stitch nice and tight. You can snip the blue yarn, you can also snip the cream yarn, and then you fasten off with the blue. And at this stage, when it comes to weaving in your ends, what I suggest you do is just weave in 3 of them and leave, I always have quite a long end left from the magic ring that I made at the start, and you can keep that and leave it and use it for sewing your wheel onto your blanket later when you need to. So when you're sewing in your ends, if you've got one that's nice and long, just sew in the other 3 and keep that long end for using it to sew on later, like I've done with this other wheel here. And that's the wheels. So that's it for the tutorials for week 1. You'll have learnt lots of new techniques, including working in rows, some simple intarsia crochet, working in the round to complete the granny squares, foundation treble crochet, which might have been new for some of you, as well as perhaps tapestry crochet to create the wheels. But hopefully all the tutorials have shown you step by step exactly how to do it. If you've got any questions or would like to chat with other makers taking part in this crochet along, then do join the Sirdar crochet Facebook group, where there's lots of other crocheters from all around the world joining in, making the blanket, and you can chat with them, ask questions. It's a really friendly and helpful group. I really hope you enjoy making the first week of this crochet along, and I look forward to hopping back next week to share next week's part of the pattern with you.